Spent 10 years in federal prison, and I thought the biggest hustles in the entire prison system were by the inmates until I discovered private prison contracts. These fucking people got this shit set up. Imagine if you have a hotel somewhere and you got 80 rooms in it and only 40 rooms are full, but you get paid for all 80. That's some pretty good shit.
Yeah, that's the way it works too. They actually are charging for more than people. If they time it right about their release and everything, they get to double charge for a lot of this shit. And it's just a total scam. You're right. My thinking about the detainment of illegal immigrants, I thought they were kind of crying a little bit about the conditions. And because I've been through some pretty bad conditions like you, and we'll touch on that. But I'm starting to believe their story a little.
Yeah, we had a guy who came into Kentucky who'd been in a private prison, and he'd been in Beaumont in Texas, which is a pretty bad place. Anyway, he'd been in a private prison. He goes, "Oh my God, Beaumont." He says it was like riding in a Cadillac down the highway compared to the private prison. He said it was terrible, and he says not because it was violent. He says, "Shit, it was horrible. They feed you. Sometimes they wouldn't, and they'd skip days." And he said it was just nuts. And yet they get paid. Here's how I found out. This got me is the BOP budget is between $8 and $9 billion a year, somewhere in there. And the two main private prison groups, I pulled their stats. The Geo Group and Core Civic together, their budget is $4.8 billion out of the Bureau of Prisons budget. I was not aware of that until I started digging into that. So half the Bureau of Prisons budget goes to the private prisons. And how many are there?
California, we had one at Taft. That's up by Bakersfield, and everybody knew, it was a decent place, but the food was horrible. But they had a really good commissary. And so if you had money, it comes back to the money thing again. If you have money and you're an inmate, it's no different than when you're out here on the streets. If you have money, life is easier. And their life was easier there if the people that had money said, "Oh, Taft was okay." And then I talked to the people who didn't have money, the regular, broke ass woods, and they were saying it like you. The food, I mean, everything was bad, and unless you were buying food from the commissary or paying people to steal what they had out of the kitchen to come cook for you.
Yeah, the money situation in those places is comparable to two places I can think of. One, they private prisons comparable to the Mexican prison system because I was Latino. We met a lot of guys came back. They said if you had money, if you're a one percenter down there in a Mexican prison, you have your own little house. You have your girlfriend come in, you have your family come and stay overnight with you. You got steaks, whatever you wanted. You're a one percenter down there. Again, you want to. If you're not a one percenter, they said basically you're screwed. You get nothing. And so it's comparable to that. And comparable to Washington, D.C. If you're a one percenter in the government, you get whatever you want to, and the rest of us all get, and it's the
Yeah.
same damn thing. But the one thing about the private prisons, and you mentioned a while ago, I think, was I was not aware of this either till a while back, that they run all this stuff with the marshal's contracts, state prison contracts, immigration detention contracts, reentry centers, and electronic monitoring systems. They charge for all that stuff too. How the hell does that work? Where's the government agency at in all this stuff then?
Well, I had regular probation officers ran my monitor, so I didn't know they were involved in that. So
Yeah. No,
you're
they
bringing
charge for it. How the hell are they charged for U.S. Marshal contracts? I mean, does anybody look at
I
this shit?
No, I thought the marshals transferred us, moved us, and if I got once we're in their prison, then we're their responsibility. But once we leave it, we're not their responsibility. I can't believe they're getting paid on that bullshit. Well, I can, of course. It's like right now I'm looking. We talked about it before. A lot of these, like people that were getting detained, the immigrants, they was complaining, "Oh, it's really packed in. We had to sleep on the floor." And I'm thinking, "Well, shit, when I was getting held down in South Texas, down in McAllen, I slept on a Rio Grande, I slept on the floor for a long time on a mattress. It was horrible." And so I'm thinking, "Oh, they're kind of crying." But now, I mean, you got people that are on hunger strikes. You got the suicide rates are extremely high. So I got to think that must be pretty shitty. I heard they're pepper spraying them and tasing them and shit inside the prison. And Really, that shit doesn't go on unless there's a riot as far as I've ever experienced, and I've got over 20 years in.
Yeah, I my only experience that kind of overcrowding was in Chicago before I went down to the prison in that tower over there, and we had, like, 200 some guys in a unit with, like, 120 beds, and then guys sleeping on the stairs and on the floor, all that kinda shit there, but they brought food in every day, and nobody was hanging themselves, probably because there wasn't any room to hang yourself, but, uh but yeah, this thing to me is, and the cruelty thing, I guess I look at that 2 ways. Yeah, I have no experience with those places. The cruelty thing, if it's true, yeah, they gotta get rid of that shit. The how much room they have and stuff, we both been through that. It's part of the goddamn deal, it really is.
Yeah.
What really irritates me though is, we're so damn concerned. This is a, I guess, public political comment. We're so damn worried about giving somebody, defrauding us on Medicaid, Medicare. Does it go on? Sure. But you don't worry about this. These are publicly traded companies. I looked up, they are publicly traded companies charging the government that much. And for services, I'll kiss your ass if they're doing all this stuff that they're talking about here. And no one checks it. And yet, to me, that's criminal, but they're the ones in charge of the criminals. So the criminals in charge of the criminals, and they're getting paid to be in charge of the criminal. I guess that's not like a fair assessment. To me, it
Yeah,
does.
you don't really hear about it like you hear about Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud, and this prison fraud, and really in its basic sense, you're actually, you're judging you have companies that are lobbying our government, to change laws to put more people in prison so they can make more money. They don't I don't wanna call it bribes. They do things for judges. There are certain judges that worked around, these private prisons, like for with kids. I remember that big scandal, had all them teenagers, and that judge was just piling in that prison that private prison with kids, sending them to prison for no reason. Then it turns out, he's getting paid from this company on the backside. But it's just, it doesn't work when you're having companies that profit from people being incarcerated. If you think that they're not pushing for people doing more time, you're out of your mind.
Yeah. No, it's an advocacy group beyond, and like I said, it doesn't get the attention because we people have been so acclimated by politicians and everybody to say, "Oh, look at they're getting stuff for free," and you can see people walking around your town, and you can sit there and say, "Oh, they're welfare people," which most of them aren't. They're not.
Yeah.
But you can point to them because they got holy jeans and they're shuffling down the street or got a beat up car or whatever. Oh, they must be on welfare. You have no idea what they're doing. But in the prison thing, if you got a bed with an inmate in it, you're paying for that. And the bed next to it in the private prison system that's empty, you're paying for the invisible inmate that's in there too. And yet no one checks on that shit. No one. There's not been an oversight on these people forever. And they're publicly traded on Wall Street. And if that don't piss off the average person, I don't know what would. So people are buying stock in a company to incarcerate people to make money. And if they don't have, and this is how Wall Street works, got a little experience there, if they don't have enough people to fill the beds, it goes right back to what you said. You have to improve or expand your product. So either change the laws to get more people in, or just bigger net and get more people in, because we're publicly traded, and their foundation, their price earnings statements are based on incarcerating people and making money. The hell kind of a system's that?
Yeah, it's the one we have, and now this Homeland Security, when Trump came back in office, they got a huge bump. It was crazy how much when they got more than almost any other agency now. They're right behind defense and shit, and most of that money has gone into building new prisons, and they're almost all private prisons. Well, there's got to be deep-seated corruption in this. I mean, they built that Alligator Alley. I think that's already closing, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and they spent tens of millions of dollars putting it up, tormenting them people. Now they're gonna close it, and nobody's talking about it. You're right, and I'm glad they're talking about Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Fuck that. If people are hustling it and grabbing money from people who need it, put them in jail. We were in jail with plenty of them, but you're not hearing anything about this, the private prison corruption, and, We know why, they have friends in low places.
Yes, they do. They do, and I said when you used to talk I said, "You talk about the Wall Street connection, the Washington connection, makes you pretty secure on those 2 right there. Once you got those 2, you're in pretty tight, and I don't know how you're gonna get them out of it. But anyway, that's what we got this week. Jack and GT, Fed Joints, the beer joints. We'll see you next time.